Um, I too had a serious issue with the headline in yesterday's newspaper, to be honest. And I did what I do not normally do, which is I actually read some of the commentary. And in a word, the commentary was atrocious. Absolutely atrocious because the commentators made it seem as though anybody that's in public education is only there because their parents cannot afford otherwise, and that they are effectively social misfits. Is without doubt that that is entirely incorrect. I want to very quickly link three things that took place in Bermuda and explain why I would mention them in the context of education. One, we had a shooting and someone died. Two, we spoke earlier in that Mr. Richards died. His wife is Kelmar Richards, the Commissioner of Education. Three, we spoke earlier of Fupa Anderson, who died. How are those things tied together? We know that a lot of times, if not all the time, the shootings that take place result from social dysfunction, and we speak to anybody that has been to Westgate. A lot of times the persons that commit these crimes and other crimes result from a lack of education. In many cases, the guys especially can't read, for example, and you can trace it back to a lot of times to their education. There were some issues there for various reasons, and they will tell you that. Ms. Richards is a leader in education. She was at Cedar Bridge for an extended period of time, and if anybody went there, absolutely brilliant, she would stand there and know every child's name as they entered on premises. Every child. Philip Anderson. What many of us may not know, and he told me this himself, is he was, you mentioned it, Senator Simmons, to some degree, Philip was actually a student in Bermuda at East End Primary at a time when Bermuda was segregated. A decision was made that they should integrate the schools. And some of the children but were allocated to go to what was formerly the St. George's Prep. He didn't go, but he told me about the experience of some of his classmates that did go. And I will not say it was a negative for him, but I'm just trying to say that all these things do go to education. And as Senator Hayward and many others have said, there is no way that education cannot be given what is necessary to succeed. Clearly, I'm a government senator, so I'm not going to speak too much in terms of the impasse on whatever took place this week. But more so in the community, it's to have members realize that if you think that persons that are in public education right now are the social misfits, you are entirely wrong. On a personal level, as many people know, I have two children. One is 13, one is 17. They are, again, as Senator Hayward spoke about his own children, they are excelling in public education. And me and my wife made a conscious decision to make sure that our children would go through the public system, with both she and I did, because we recognize that the public system can give them what they need. My appeal has always been to parents to make sure that you're involved in various levels. I have the delight every morning of driving my son to school, and we talk about what's happening at school. And the evening time, the reverse takes place. Callan, what did you learn today? And he'll go through and tell me what he learned. What is also to me amazing is right now he's doing math, he's doing some world history and some health and whatever. It's the task that I give him sometimes is, Callan, get out your whiteboard and teach Daddy about X. And he will do that from the public education system. I went to the parent meetings 2 weeks ago, and we went around. And yes, the teachers, I was happy with the teachers because they themselves do take an interest in what is happening in education. And so, is the system perfect? No, it's not perfect. But I can assure you that the public system is definitely doing a good job in terms of our students. And it is entirely irresponsible for anybody to cast a pall, if you will, over the entire system to say that it is graduating dysfunctional or underachieving students. Senator Hayward also spoke about the dual enrollment program. And I know, too, for a fact that parents may send their children sometimes to private schools to get the IGCSEs and what have you, but then enroll them in public education because they want them to enroll in the dual enrollment program, because the students can then, at a much lesser cost, graduate from high school with their high school diploma plus a 2-year associate degree from Bermuda College. That is part of the public system. And as senators will know from this session and last session, I do my best to ensure that I speak to the positives of public education almost on a weekly basis, not because I believe that everything is perfect, and not because I'm not aware of some things that are negative, but because I want to make sure that the positives are actually highlighted. One of my phrases from last session was that, unfortunately, a lot of times we shout the failures and whisper the successes. This is ridiculous. We have to do better as a community. And one of my own motivations, to be honest, is that we cannot in any way allow for there to be two systems, because especially when it comes to our children, we do not know who our children will marry. And so if we are in any way part of the process that tries to, that tries to promote or sustain this idea of being private system is perfect and public system is less than, that is not going to work. It's going to create some significant social dysfunction going forward. And so I would implore all parties, those that are currently in the education system, from leadership right down to the teachers and including the paraeducators, to do what's necessary, because I know, again, from personal experience, that teachers, educators, a lot of them, if not most of them, make tremendous effort in terms of what they do on a daily basis, up very early, doing for children, whether it be buying supplies, lunches and clothes and all the rest of it, doing things on after school and weekends and the whole 9 yards. And so I will say yet again that I will continue to be an advocate for public education and encourage the public to be practical, to be realistic about what takes place in education. And as parents, your first responsibility is to prepare your children to understand the value of education and to go to school prepared to learn, not to be rude, not to be dysfunctional, but to be prepared to learn, because I also maintain that a teacher, an educator, will definitely work with any child that they have in their class if that child is prepared to learn and is well behaved. On a slightly different note, I just want to comment that as I drive to work, and I work in the East, I'm mindful of what's happening and what's going on. But as a general comment for the economy now, going back to that, as I normally refer to sometimes on a week-to-week basis, is an indicator of the health of the economy is actually construction. In this case, residential construction. And as I drive and I go down Social and turn through by Painters Road and head down Harrington Sound Road there are 3 significant residences being built. I think when we fully understand what's taking place, there may be some issues because they're using, arable spaces, on arable spaces, but brand new spaces, right? But my real point is that it is an indication that what we sometimes hear as old doom and gloom cannot be the case. Because if I have access to, and I'm sure, each of these places will cost more than $1 million. If I have access to that money, I have to have a positive perspective on Bermuda to outlay those kinds of funds to build a residence. My last comment is, yesterday I heard some comments from the Minister of Finance at the forum, if you will, of the Institute of Directors, and he put it very succinctly in terms of where we are with respect to government finances. In that, number one, he will be looking to, on a pure current account basis, make sure that there is a surplus. Number two, he will make sure that if you take the current account plus our sinking fund contribution, make that a surplus. That'll be step two. And step three will be to make sure that the pure current account, the sinking fund contribution, and our capital expenditure will become a surplus. And I say that to say that he put it very succinctly, but it bodes well for where we are going in the context of the Minister of Finance on behalf of government, who clearly will be the lead when it comes to preparing Bermuda for the next budget, which should be delivered in February of 2019. So with that, Madam President, I will conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Richardson.